Hey guys, hope you're well. So this is a discussion about God and Allah. Now this might be provocative to some Muslims, is because they say, well, God is just Allah is just the Arabic for God. It all means the God, right? So what he's talking about. So what I want to do is present a perspective on God. I don't think here's the thing, I'm a theist. Okay, so I do believe there is a God. My understanding of what God is mainly comes from experience of some kind, and is expanded upon and developed a lot from researching into near-death experiences about the nature of God or what God is. So if you're a Muslim watching this, I would advise you to look into near-death experiences. But one of the things I also love was a guy called Emmanuel Swedenborg, who was a Christian mystic and theologian. And I'm not a Christian, just in case you think I'm trying to convert you to Christianity. The aim of this video is really just to give you perhaps a different perspective on God, and really to see that the God that you may be following, Islam, is actually God, is that true God. So my understanding of God is that God is beyond our understanding, but some of the characteristics of God, the deepest characteristic, one of the core characteristics of God is love. And by love I mean, best way to describe it I think is the underlying sentiment, the underlying intention, the underlying energy of the following things: parental love, sibling love, romantic love, love for things, love for passions, interests, appreciation, loving kindness, compassion, empathy, generosity, forgiveness, the energy that underlies all those things and unites all those things and even transcends all those things. So that's what I mean by love, a divine love. So that's all my understanding of God, or one of the core characteristics of God. So one of the things I really love about Emmanuel Swedenborg, he says one of the ways in how can we draw closer to God, how do we connect God. And not only that, even there's a way in which even people who don't believe in God still are worshipping God or living in accordance with what God wants. And he says it's through love, it's through gratitude, appreciation, it's through loving kindness, it's through generosity, it's through thinking about how things can benefit everybody, yourself included, how things can help everybody. And you want health and happiness for everybody, yourself included. You try to forgive people who have done wrong against you. You are compassionate, you're considerate, you respect other people's boundaries. And by their boundaries, I'm also talking about their inner world. You're not trying to dominate, control people's minds or hearts or their bodies. You know, that's what I mean. That's that kind of love. That's what I'm talking about. And so that's so you can see how somebody who even may not believe in the concept of God can still be worshipping God or living in accordance with what God wants, if they're just trying to be a loving human being, which I think many people are. So if you're doing that and you live in accordance with God, according to Emmanuel Swedenborg and according to, I believe, near-death experiences and my understanding too. So if you look at that understanding of God, then how does your understanding of God in Islam follow? Some people who are Muslims would have an understanding, I believe, and try to live their life completely in accordance with what I've just said. But I think some people have a perspective of a God of vengeance, a God of anger, a God of hate, in a sense, or a God of punishment. Like the notion in many interpretations of Islam is the idea that God would somehow create a hell, power hell, continue to have hell continue to have hell, yeah, to continue have hell to exist, and then with the full knowledge that billions of sapient beings would be sent to hell and tortured mercilessly for eternity. Is that congruent with love? That doesn't seem congruent with love at all. On the other hand, you can take the perspective of, regarding hell, you can take the perspective of near-death experiences and Emmanuel Swedenborg and their near-death experiences. And the reason why I'll probably say near-death experiences more than Emmanuel Swedenborg, like I said, he was a Christian, so you might be a bit averse to that. But if you take near-death experiences, this spans people of all religions and beliefs. Is their understanding of hell is where it's basically like a frequency or an energy or a place which is congruent with your particular mindset or your character. So if you're somebody who's very manipulative, we want revenge a lot, or you get you tend to try to dominate and control other human beings, you'll be put in a place with other beings who have the same mindset, or in a place where the energy of the atmosphere, the environment reflects that. So I think but the great thing is you put yourself there, and you can get out just by either calling upon, asking angels, asking for help, or asking God directly, or trying to cultivate a better character. That's how you can get out of hell. And if you take that, you can be in hell right now. If you're somebody who fosters grudges and revenge and tries to manipulate people and dominate and control people, you might be in hell right now, right? Or you're an ungrateful person, you might be in hell right now. But yeah, so that, I think that's a far more humane way of I think that's far more a way that's more congruent with God's love, because God doesn't put you there, you put yourself there, and it's not for eternity, it's just whenever you want to try to work your way out. Just that first spark of I want to change as a person is like the first step out of hell, right? So because God gave us free will, so if you think of that perspective of choice and God's love, I think that's far more congruent than the Islamic notion that God created hell, knowing ahead of time that billions of people or however many people we don't know the exact number, are going to be tortured mercilessly for eternity. How is that congruent with a God of love? That God is love, and the most merciful, most compassionate. If you had the power, would you do that? Yeah, so that's an example of how is God congruent with Allah, right? Or incongruent with Allah. And another example is some of the laws of Islam. Would you advocate slavery? Is slavery love? Is killing people for changing their religious beliefs, even if because they might be, I know it might be hard for you to perhaps empathize, but there are people who genuinely can believe something that is radically different to you. And I don't mean that to be condescending, but they genuinely believe that they're not deceiving themselves. They're not trying to pretending otherwise. So if somebody genuinely does not believe the religion is true and leaves the religion, is it okay for them to be killed? Or perhaps somebody slips. I mean, when I mean slips, I mean of course this slippage takes place over time, and no innuendo, slips in terms of their ethical character and commits adultery. Or somebody may be born only inclined to romantically and sexually like people of the same sex. Think it's okay to have the death penalty for them? Is that in accordance with love? Truly, is that in accordance with choice? How is choice, and how does God respect free will if there's a deterrent of death for leaving the religion? If somebody thinks in this lifetime I might actually be killed if I leave the religion, psychologically you're not going to question the religion. And if you also believe that you might be tortured mercilessly for eternity, you're going to have an aversion to even questioning the religion. But again, if you have a perspective of God rather than Allah, if you have a perspective of God, then you realize that it's not about having a particular metaphysical belief system. And if you look at near-death experiences, people can have a divergence of metaphysical beliefs, and nobody's deemed wrong. What God most cares about in the life review, like when you review your life, you see the impact of all your behavior and your intentions on other human beings. What people care about the most is how loving they were. That was their intention. They may not have applied that love wisely, while your actions may not have been exactly what needed to be done to have the outcome, but the intention was there. And then eventually it seems like the love tends to create wise actions over time. People who tend to be quite loving as they grow older, they tend to be, in my life experience, they tend to become more and more decent human beings. They might start off a bit crooked when they're younger, but if their intention to be as loving as they can is quite strong, they tend to become better and better human beings over time. But anyway, I'm going off course. But basically what I'm saying is that what God seems to most care about is if you're living in accordance with God's values. Like one of the things I love again about Emmanuel Swedenborg is, it says, how do you draw closer to God? It gives an analogy. If you traveled somewhere else on the other side of the world, but you come across somebody who may have the same passions as you, like you particularly like a TV show or genre of music, or you play the guitar, or you have some other kind of hobby, you're into martial arts or weightlifting. You meet other people with exactly the same interests as you. like really strong, passionate interest. There's like a familiarity there. So there's a kind of emotional connection there, almost instantaneously, when you realize, wow, this person really cares about this thing as much as I do. And so he says one of the ways in which we connect to God is through having the same kind of intent and values. And one of God's core character is love. So if you're living your life in accordance with love, with the intention of love, and love in the previous way to describe, like appreciation, loving kindness, compassion, empathy, generosity, forgiveness. If you try to live your life, of course, applying these things wisely, you know, if you live in life in accordance with love, then you live in life in accordance with God. So yeah. So how does that match up to your understanding of God? And do you really think that? Because my perspective on the traditional Islamic version of God is God. There is an underlying quality of love, but there's also this desire for dominance and control, and God seems to, or Allah seems to want people to exert dominance over human beings through support of imperialism, support of military violence, support of deterring people through threat of death away from leaving the religion, or homosexuality or adultery. I don't see how that is conducive, how that's congruent with love, or threatening people with threats of eternal torture if they question a religion or question Muhammad and things like this. So how is that congruent with love? And like I said, I would offer an alternative for you to look into near-death experiences and look into what the universal message of universal experience is. When you take all the different experiences and try to find the overlaps and the commonalities, what's the overall message? And the overall message seems to be love. It's the most important thing you can do is love. Love yourself, love others, love God. It seems to be the most important thing you can do in this life, and just to try and as much as you can, live your life in accordance with that. So I think that's a far better God to worship and God to follow than the God of traditional Islam. But please, if you would like to discuss this, please write in the comments or make a video of your own. Okay, so take care, and I hope you're well.